It was like a homecoming movie.
Als das Kind Kind war, wusste es nicht, dass es Kind war. Alles war ihm beseelt und alle Seelen waren eins.
The strangest beginning to a film that I've ever encountered.
It was the most important film I did in my life.
Dreams and images and monologues is my nature.
An angel is an expert without experience.
I wanted to fly.
It's truly the most incredible cinematic experience of observation of human detail.
I'd lived in America for 8 years. I'd come back, and I tried to rediscover this country of mine through the city of Berlin, which was my favorite place in Germany, and started to have that desire to make a film really about the city, where the city could really show itself with all its facets. That was, of course, years before the wall fell. None of us at the time thought we'd ever see that wall come down, and it was still a very, very peculiar island of a city. There was nothing like it. At the same time, make a film about, I don't know, the Germany in my heart or in my youth or whatever connected me to the language and to the place and to the history. So already when I lived in America, I started to read what I considered the most beautiful expression in the German language, and that was the poetry of Rilke. And wandering through Berlin and sort of still religiously almost reading Rilke every evening, at least one poem, these poems are all populated, so to speak, by angels, lots of them. And they reverberated in the city in a strange way, because I started to see all these angel figures, not just on cemeteries, but also all over the place. And as I was sort of strolling around the city, trying to find a story that I can somehow use to express everything I want to express about the city and its history, and I was looking for possible characters. I thought of mailmen or firemen, people who get around, so we could see many facets of the city. At one point, I suddenly wrote down, and made lots of notes every day, wrote down guardian angels, ? As a vague possibility. I don't even know where it came from. And those were the characters I'd be looking for, because they could really be everywhere and appear everywhere, and they could cross through walls, could of course also cross through the wall. They could be omnipresent, and they would allow me to have this complete overview of the city. So I started to think, how can you make a movie with angels as your heroes? They should be invisible, which was a great tool cinematically. Then the idea popped up that they might even be able to listen to our thoughts, which would allow me to use a lot of interior voice and stuff and talk about things that normally people wouldn't talk about, that they would only think about.
Meine Frau hat dich verraten. Dein Freund ist in einer anderen Stadt. Deine Kinder erinnern sich nur noch an deinen Sprachfehler. Du könntest dir vor dem Spiegel jedes Mal eine runterhauen. Was ist das? Irgendwas ist. Ich bin doch auch noch da.
I had this conglomerate of ideas in my head, and I flew to Salzburg, Austria, where my friend Peter Handke was living. We had worked together before on several films, and I thought Peter would be perfect, so I could just download all these ideas and all this material, the angel idea most of all, and ask him to turn it into a script with me.
I was astonished by his idea. I never had thought about angels in my life. Only when I was a child, there was guardian angels everywhere. I felt them. And so I told him, perhaps it's a good idea, but if I would be an angel, I would like to become a human being, to see blood, to touch, to become mortal.
After I told him the entire thing, everything I knew, it wasn't all that much. Knew these angels, I figured we'd better have two than just one, or even more. And I had a list of people, character that I wanted these angels to sort of visit and connect. And Peter just listened to all of it patiently, and then at the end said, I can't do it. I don't know how to do it. So I went home, sort of sadly, because that had been my one hope. And then I got a letter from him a couple of days later saying, hey, this story of yours, it stayed in my head. Tell you what I do.
I told him, I can't tell you a story. I can't write you a story. You have to shoot the film, and I will send you every day during 1 month or so what is crossing my mind or my soul.
I write you a handful of monologues or dialogues that I think in some way or another might be useful. I don't know if you can use it. I like the idea of the angels, so they do certainly have a first meeting where they have their first conversation. I write you that one. And I write you the first time that the angel runs into the woman that he fell in love with. And that was part of my idea, the love story. That was the big idea, period.
A woman is talking to a man, and the woman wants to convince him that he has to love. Has to love her.
Il me suffit d'être prête et tous les hommes du monde me regarderont.
I felt someone behind me who pushed me to write about the urgency of love.
Nostalgie. Nostalgie d'une vague d'amour qui monterait en moi. C'est ça qui ne cesse de me rendre maladroite, l'absence de plaisir. Envie d'aimer.
So Peter wrote me over the next few weeks these wonderful, mostly monologues. And I sort of tried to incorporate them all in the course of the shoot, which then happened without a script whatsoever.
His force is creating atmosphere, creating room, space, for instance. And this is sometimes for a movie is more touching than telling a straightforward story.
And it seemed to me like with these angels, I was so flexible. I could just incorporate it all. And if I would write it first, I would ruin it. I was ready to do this. And then Peter's pieces came. They sort of represented some islands for me in the middle of this chaos. And we started really totally unprepared, I must say.
Endlich ahnen, statt immer alles zu wissen. Ach und oh und a und weh sagen können, statt ja und amen.
Ja.
The choice of Bruno Ganz and Otto for the two leading characters was made the first moment I even thought of casting. I knew I needed 2 angels. 3 would be a crowd, 2 would be good. And I figured I better cast 2 good friends because these 2 angels had spent already an eternity together.
I have the opportunity to perform an angel was very unusual.
And Bruno and Otto had worked on stage together for 20 years.
And he had a sheet of paper, just 2 sentences on it. 2 angels in the sky over Berlin. What do you think about it? I think a wonderful idea, let's do it. But who will find the story? And he said, we all together.
Let's say he had no script, no dialogue, nothing you usually have. It was something, the whole time we were somehow under construction.
But asking them to play angels was quite something because for once I didn't have any real preparational work for them to do.
Mainly it was really kind of brainstorming and talking about how we got in touch with this world of angels.
There's always gifts and pitfalls to having a really indelible performance that precedes you. Bruno Ganz, I think, is in a certain sense, not to diminish Otto's contribution, but you think of his expression and he is the window into life in that film.
Bruno and Otto are responsible for my casting Kurt Bohr as Homer, because a few months before we made the film, they showed me the tape of their documentary because they are so fond of Kurt and sort of had interviewed him.
Noch niemanden ist es gelungen, ein Epos des Friedens anzustimmen. Was ist denn am Frieden, dass er nicht auf die Dauer begeistert und dass sich von ihm kaum erzählen lässt?
We were interested to make a documentary about two very different actors.
One was Jewish and went in the Third Reich, went out to Hollywood, and his name was Kurt Bois. And he played in one film, Casablanca, and a lot of films. He did small parts. And the other was Bernard Minetti. He stood in town in Berlin at that time.
And so we wanted to kind of, not to compare, yeah, it happens, you when you watch the film you will compare them, but we just wanted to show that what was possible in a certain period of German history on our field, let's say, actors.
Wim saw this documentary film and he knew him, and then we went to a cup of tea to him, and I said, this is Wim Wenders, very famous director. Would you like to be in a film with us and play Homer, a very wise old man who knows about a lot of Berlin? And he said, why not?
Die Welt scheint zu verdämmern. Doch ich erzähle, wie am Anfang, in meinem Singsang, der mich aufrechterhält.
And that you had like really almost the best was the character of an archangel. I call him the archangel of storytelling.
Erzähle, Muse, vom Erzähler, dem an den Weltrand verschlagenen, kindlichen Uralten, und mach an ihm kenntlich den Jedermann.
The idea that Homer is still alive and he's strolling around between human beings and talking about storytelling. This was, I liked it a lot.
And of course, Peter, as a writer, related to my archangel of storytelling.
I felt familiar to his mourning, to his jokes, to his wandering.
It was really more of a written for sort of a mythical figure, not so much an angel or archangel, somewhere in between the two territories of people and angels.
Nicht bammeln, fliegen! Du bist ein Engel!
Himmel, Arsch und Zwirn und Wolkenbruch. Ich kann nicht fliegen mit den Dingern.
Natürlich kannst du. Ist mit Flügel ist einfacher als ohne.
Aber nicht mit diesen Hühnerfedern.
In the very initial core of the story, the guardian angels, one of them would fall in love. Obviously, I needed to invent the character of a woman that he would fall in love with. And these angels, we had seen it all for ages and ages. What would really make one of them cross that line? It had to be something very special somehow. And I don't know, at some point I came up with the idea that maybe it would help if that woman would fly. It was as naive as that. And then I thought of a trapeze artist in a circus. And the idea of a circus appealed a lot to me. First of all, somehow, cinematically, it had to do with the world of the angels and their invisibility. I don't know what. And then I told the idea to Solveig, my girlfriend at the time, and she, of course, went for it in a big way, because I had never intended or never imagined that any actress could, in a matter of 8 weeks, learn to be a trapeze artist. No net, no security. She was always actually on the trapeze up there. And after 8 weeks, she could do it all, and we never needed to use a stunt for a single scene. It seemed to me that these metaphoric and poetic characters of angels, they could never exist in color. I don't know, I never really thought much about it. It was sort of obvious. I took it as a given from the beginning that their story had to be black and white.
I think the choice of black and white, of course, went right to the idea of everything's there but the color. I mean, the fullness of human experience can only be experienced once you make that leap and transition.
Also, I always feel like in black and white photographs, you see more the essence of things. It's like X-raying. Somehow in the black and white portrait, you see the person maybe not as realistic, but somehow you see really clearer who that is. But once I knew we would shoot Wings of Desire in black and white, plus with these angel characters and their invisibility and all the special effects that one could possibly dream of, I knew there was just one DP on this planet who could really handle it and who should make it and who should come out of retirement, and that was Henri. As soon as I told him about the angels being invisible, shooting in black and white, his hands were getting wet. He called his gaffer, Louis, who was a year older than Henri. Henri was only 80, but Louis, his gaffer, was 81.
And he had his assistant working 50 years altogether, they both. And he make a light in a room. And the young Berlin light man said, "Oh, this old man, look at him, what a light." And then once they said, "Look at this, 20 lamps and no shadow. No shadows in the whole room. How did they, old guys, do such a fantastic light?" Incredible. And for that time, they did all for Henri and his assistant. They worked for them and said they had genius.
Henri gave the film an incredible touch. I mean, there's the guy who shot Beauty and the Beast, just to mention one film, which for me is still the most beautiful black and white film ever achieved.
He was really able to create a space using thousands of different grays, from black to white, all this kind of, and tiny things, and he did a great work.
We shot the whole film with one filter that he had handmade himself in the 30s with a stocking of his grandmother, a silk stocking of his grandmother. And that material was impossible to find, and we only had that one thing, a fragile thing that was already 50 years old. And I had to get in front of the lens for every shot and had to be attached very carefully because it, of course, didn't fit with the modern camera equipment. It had to be sort of taped in front of every lens.
Wim, he moves the camera. He uses every technical possibility. He's using it most of the time in a innovative way. Sometimes he's playing a lot too with technical things.
Our eyes, angel eyes, are the camera.
So I think they managed to cinematically capture life, capture a city in Berlin and its existence prior to to the fall of that wall. That I think Wim probably intended more to be a meditation on that city. But what's interesting is it got away from him because in a way it became a larger human discussion that I don't think he even anticipated.
I was rather interested how they would look, how they would appear, what they would, the outfit.
On the first day of shooting, we didn't even have the wardrobe for the angels clarified. And we were still experimenting. So they would appear on the set, Bruno and Otto, in these hilarious outfits. And we just tested everything that was related to angels and that we could find in pictures or in paintings.
He said initially I was sort of conceiving of the armor. And obviously the armor becomes this wonderful touch that connects all the fallen angels in his picture. But he said we were really searching around trying to conceive. He said, and literally I had my wardrobe person run out and who came back with these overcoats. And he said, and that was already into the beginning of production.
And I found a photo from Issey Miyake And that was a Japanese guy, like a samurai fighter, with the hair like this and with a tail. Step by step, we found how to design, how to is the image of the angel.
Now, with costumes, I'll tell you what you worry about. The hat. The hat is the most difficult thing.
Come on, how about trying that?
For Christ's sakes, get me a good hat here, will you? First of all, there's a lot of shots in the movies that come from here up. So who cares about your shoes? They don't care. And your pants and all that, sometimes even a coat. But from here up, that's where the money is.
We were already 2 or 3 weeks into the shoot when I realized there was something missing. And I realized it was some sort of more comical figure who wouldn't take himself so seriously. I had the feeling everything was too serious. These angels took themselves too seriously. And somehow the film needed some intrusion into this world. My assistant Claire Denis and me, we had this glorious idea to add the character of a former angel. Somebody who had gone through what Damian was about to go through. And the more I thought about it, the more I figured it better be somebody very famous, because the idea of a former angel would be so much more convincing or so much more thrilling if it was someone that we all knew.
The Clovo character was, everybody knew him. Everybody knew him. And just one more thing, and where's your raincoat? It was fantastic. The German people connect with that character. Maybe that's why Wim thought of it, you know. I guess they have such an affection for that character. They're so interested in him that he would be a good ex-angel.
And there was some tenderness in him and something very convincing, a friendliness and a gentleness in his whole persona that I figured would translate his being a former angel really well.
Ex-angel? I heard of ex-convicts. I heard of ex-wives. I never heard of an ex-angel.
And he said, this is the craziest thing that I've ever been offered. And you have no script? I said, no, we have no script. When do you need me?
Maybe he loved Wim and he wanted to take part in this kind of experience and developing something, not knowing exactly before what. And I think he liked this way to do this film.
When he came, he was Columbo. And when he went after 3 weeks, he was a friend of mine.
I'm your friend. Compañero.
The stroke of genius is having Peter Falk not only playing himself, but having, again, been revealed to be a fallen angel, because that makes it possible for all of us.
I can't see you, but I know you're here. I feel it. You've been hanging around since I got here. I wish I could see your face. Just look into your eyes and tell you how good it is to be here. Life on Earth was rich. That was my point when I would talk to these angels. Hey, come back over here. There's a lot of good things going on, you know.
I felt very limited and restricted because I couldn't behave like people what they was, and I felt I saw the danger that it would be boring because these guys are standing around. They are just communicating by looks, and they are listening to people's thoughts. They can read people. They can understand what they are thinking, but not. There is no action, no interfering.
Of course, their invisibility created lots of problems and, of course, lots of fun, too.
It was contradiction because I liked it to be invisible, but on the other hand, I felt a little bit like in a prison.
And once I said to Wim, please get me back from heaven, put me on earth.
Otto had sort of come up with a concept that he would very soon become a criminal. And he had beautiful ideas for that.
And I said I will do the same as an angel. Be on every point in every time. So I need cars, very fast running, and women around me, alcohol.
Incredible scenes in his head, and we didn't get to shoot any of it. After almost, 80% of my shooting time and budget, it was about time to get Damiel over there into the realm of people and color. But there was not enough money to have Cassiel follow, not enough time. Only years later, because of that, I made Far Away So Close, so Otto could finally cross the line.
Ich werde sie in den Arm nehmen.
I remember the day we were shooting the transition from an angel to be a human being. There we didn't really know what he would say and how, and I mean, there's no experience, nobody in the world did happened to be first an angel and then he became a human being, and so we had really to invent this kind of dialogue, or the lines Daniel would say.
Wim called me and told me, can you write one sentence about an angel who is becoming a human being, who is falling out of the sky and touching the earth? We need one small sentence.
Well, what is this? This is blood. Jesus Christ, so and how does it smell? What is it?
He's bleeding and he's licking his blood, and suddenly he tells to himself, oh, it tastes fine. And so I did not even write this sentence. I told him at the telephone.
Jetzt begreife ich einiges.
Je suis là. Je suis libre. Je peux tout m'imaginer. Tout est possible. Je n'ai qu'à lever les yeux et je redeviens le monde. Maintenant, sur cette place, un sentiment de bonheur que je pourrais avoir toujours.
When we were shooting, of course, the thoughts and the inner voices weren't in place yet. And I had no tapes to play to these people with their own thoughts.
The night before, or even in the morning before shooting, we had a sort of dialogue, and we knew exactly what people would say and what they would think.
These shots were all done more or less silently, but I had prepared like my own version of what they might think. And while we were shooting, I was sort of talking over the shot, sort of as if I was in their minds, and it worked quite nicely. It was sort of a rudimental approach, but I gave them their thoughts as they were shooting, so they could sort of get lost in their own thoughts.
I had my own thoughts because I saw the guy or the woman or the girl, and it was only in my fantasy.
Only in the very end, the decisive element came to it, which was the voices.
I came to Berlin when the film was being edited by Peter Przygoda. And then I realized that Wim let drop out a lot of my fragments or texts. And I felt that the film was nearly silent, only music and some too much atmosphere. And then I proposed Wim to, in the editing phase, to all my texts, nearly all of what I had written, to put it in the editing phase of the film.
And that really reshaped some of the scenes one more time, when finally we heard people's thoughts. That did throw a very different light on the film.
Sie ist nicht fort, Cassiel, ich weiß es. Ich werde sie wiederfinden. Etwas wird geschehen und es wird gelten heute Nacht.
the lyrics and the words and the fantasies and the dreams and the dialogues, I think they give the impact to the film. Without this, the film wouldn't have been worked, I think. For this, I'm nearly not proud, but I'm satisfied.
Peter Falk's thoughts were recorded here in Los Angeles.
I'm in Ecuador, in the mountains, with the Indians, about 15,000 feet above sea level. And there's a telephone call from Wim Wenders. Hi, Wim. Peter, yeah, we have a problem. What is it? The interior thoughts. We got to do them again. Why? Well, it's not clear. It's not, the reception is not good.
We needed his inner voice really last second. It was the last element missing of the film. And and I sent Peter a number of pages with suggestions for his thoughts, because somehow it didn't feel proper to write the thoughts of a former angel.
What do I do? He said, in Los Angeles, you go into a studio and you'll talk again. I said, will you hear? No. I said, you're not going to listen to him? He said, don't send him to me. And that was the way it was done.
And he was just, until the tape ran out in the studio, he was just giving me this endless stream of consciousness. It was perfect on the spot.
If Grandma was here, she'd say, spazier. Go spazieren.
Except that he kept mentioning his grandmother, which of course, and not many people have noticed it, is a no-no for an ex-angel. He doesn't have a grandmother. But we let it be, and the grandmother still is in there. And only very few people realize that this is a crucial mistake for a former angel. He cannot have a grandmother. The music part of the filmmaking process for me, from the very beginning, was the most privileged one. I think I made my first short films in order to put music on them. And sometimes I think that's still why I'm making movies, to wait for that moment. In Wings of Desire, they needed a score with the angels and that particular world and that very poetic reality that was created through the circus and through the angels. I knew I needed a score, and I relied on a composer from Berlin that I had already worked with 4 or 5 times before, Jürgen Knieper.
Wim called me and said, I'd like to have some angel music. Could you write me some angel music for my latest film? So I thought, angel music, no problem. Harp, choir, high violins and so. And then I saw the film and saw the angels are unhappy people.
Es ist herrlich, nur geistig zu leben und Tag für die Ewigkeit von den Leuten rein, was geistig ist, zu bezeugen. Aber manchmal wird mir meine ewige Geistesexistenz zu viel.
They want to be human beings because they are missing something. And a very interesting, a very funny thing was, I always thought how to do this. The difference between angels and human beings in music. That's the difference between black and white and color. Wim loved the cello very much. And I love the cello too. And the cello was not so in this time. It was something new to take a cello, a solo cello. The people who play this music are only 2 synth players, cello, viola, violin, and a harp. It's only 6 people, and the choir. It sounds big, but it's only 6 people. And I wanted to have this pure thing of string quartet, string trio in this case, and the harp. Yeah, just I need it, because an angel without harp, what's...
I told him to make extensive use of voices. Already we had voices, a lot of voices in the film, and all the tapestry of the human thoughts that go through the film, I considered was already part of the soundtrack somehow. But he also used choirs and singing voices for the first time in his score.
Der Vorteil des Vorstands besteht
Finding the choir was not very difficult because there was a choir, an American radio station in Berlin. It's called Ria's Chamber Choir. And we, about 40 people, half women, half men. And then Wim came into the studio where all this choir was assembled, and he had many papers. There would have been the communistic manifest by things, newspaper things, and poems and everything. And everybody got one of those sheets of paper. And the first thing I did was, please, could you whistle? So we did it for 6 minutes or something. Then he said, so now read it with very low voice, and so on, and then very loud. And then I played them in, everybody had earphones, then I played them this ancient chord in the earphones, and I told them, you can sing, but sing only things, you have to sing your text, and you sing only in those tones you hear in the third. In the end, we had to sing it very loud and very high. That was, I think, the 8th thing we had. And then I called them to say, so we had, in the end, perhaps, I think, 11 or 13 tapes for the same thing. So we have to find a very, very big table to have all of us, because we couldn't do it electronically. We had to 13 tracks of music. We could mix it or put it together.
And I felt that really also created a link between the different worlds in the film. City of Berlin, the circus, the movie set where Peter was shooting, the library where the Angels was living.
And I didn't make a film like this before, or perhaps it's a very strange, such a strange music in all, you know. So perhaps nobody did the music like this before or something. I don't know. It was a very important thing for me.
Speziellen Teil geht ebenfalls mit einer Kultur einher, gelegentliches Todesweisen. Der Fruchttod erfolgt gewöhnlich im zweiten.
He sings in pictures always, and he trusts in the actors he got on the set. So the actors have every freedom. They can do what they want.
Generosity, sense of humor, and that he is willing to take these risks.
Everybody loves him when he does films together with him. Everybody gives his last for him. It was always this way. And he's a friend, but a friend, you don't know anything about him. I don't know anything about him. I know him since we did the first film, 1970. I don't know anything I know about him is through his films.
Like no one I know, he has the sense of space and timing and rhythm. When I saw his films, I was deeply touched by this sense of space. It was like nearly a religious feeling.
The world is full of talented directors. There's a huge army of them, and they're very, very gifted people. But there's only a handful that are truly original. And Wim's an original.
I felt I'd made something very poetic, but certainly not very accessible, I figured. Anyway, I'd made it to make sure that I wasn't going to repeat myself after Paris, Texas, and make something very different. And I had no idea, of course, that it would be embraced the way it was then embraced. I mean, in Cannes, we arrived with our very first print. Nobody had ever seen the film. And then the film became a big success in Cannes. And turned out afterwards, I mean, both critically and in terms of audiences, turned out a bigger success than Paris, Texas, which was, I felt, mind-boggling. I really seriously thought nobody's going to follow you on this path here. That's going to remain a very mysterious, very strange art house movie. But no, it went everywhere, and it went so far that I got an offer from an American studio to buy the remake rights.
Ich weiß jetzt, was kein Engel weiß.
There is an enormous amount of people that over the years have come to me and say how much Wings of Desire changed their lives, and if any film ever changed their lives, it was this one.
It was an achievement, and it was a new thing for cinema.
Everywhere in the world, they wanted me to make films because of this music.
The Japanese, they have no angels in their religion. So a lot of people saw this film in Tokyo. And then they came to me and, you are the angel from this film. It's impossible to see you, you are invisible, and things like that. And I found it in Japan a lot of times.
See, the picture affected people. They would talk about it like it made a difference in their lives. They was taken by it.
When it was released, it happened to me. Getting into an airplane in Berlin, people would say, "Oh, it's you. That's great. We feel secure. We feel safe. That's good that you are flying with us."
Think of it as a human epic of intimate proportions.
Wings had a very personal effect on many people. I know that, and I have countless letters and countless sort of witnesses. People who come to me and say, "Hey, you know, we're married because of your film."